Welcome to the Skylake build. In this 3-part series we'll show you everything you need to create the most ultimate gaming PC, as well as show you how it's done. If you've ever wanted to get into PC gaming, or whether you want to ramp it up with some 4K G-Sync gaming, this is the place to start. In part 1 we're going to go through everything we need to create this computer and why it's in there in the first place. Why have we chosen all these different components rather than something else? If you want to skip ahead to part 2 or 3, then you can find them in the top right hand corner in the little eye. But if they're not yet available, then please subscribe and you'll get to see them as soon as they come available. So to kick us off, let's start with this Skylake processor. This is the i7-6700K. It's an Intel 4-core processor and is pretty much the ultimate 4-core gaming CPU. It doesn't matter if you want to play games at 1080p at 144Hz or at 4K at 60. This CPU is going to keep up with whatever your graphics card is capable of doing, and because it's an i7, it's going to be very capable at doing other tasks as well. Now the motherboard we're using is the Maximus 8 Ranger, and this is a Republic of Gamers one from Asus. It's a very good motherboard because it looks very good, it's got great performance, and I personally really like the BIOS that they use, and it's very easy to get around, and even when you're in the desktop you've got some great fan control. You can just click on automate your fans, and then it will basically work out what the best settings are for each fans, and the result is a nice quiet PC or a nice cool PC when you're gaming. The motherboard is also meant to be very good for overclocking. I haven't done this yet, but we will find this out in a future video. Thank you so much to Asus who provided the motherboard for this video. Now before we talk about anything else in the case, we probably should talk about the case itself, which is the Corsair 600C. This is one of Corsair's newest cases, and it's an inverted layout, which means that the hotter components go at the bottom, which then exhaust their heat out of the top. It's quite interesting, and the only real downside is that your graphics cards are going to end up upside down, so you won't be able to read the logo. But it's a very light, airy case that I can say now is actually surprisingly easy to build in, and it's really nice when it comes to build quality and visuals, as long as you can accommodate a side window that looks to the right rather than the left. Now Corsair provided the case as well as a whole host of other components apart from these fans that I provided myself because I like purple LED fans and the performance should be slightly better than those on the stock case. Now in order to run 4K we're going to need some serious graphics horsepower. So Asus provided the fastest GTX 980 they had around, which is their 20th anniversary edition, which is massive, it's big, it's heavy, and it's really quiet as well. It's got some serious performance. But that's not all, because we have a second GTX 980, and this is my personal one, the reference one from MSI. Now if we actually take a closer look at the Asus one, and it comes in this special box and comes nicely presented, and it really is a thing of beauty. It comes with a mouse mat as well, which I've used, and it's a mouse mat, but I guess it's quite a nice thing to have. But these graphics cards are going to be able to perform very well. They do only have 4GB of VRAM, so if you really want to be running 4K and you have an endless supply of cache, then maybe you want to step up to some 980 Ti's, but this is going to be more than enough, bearing in mind we have G-Sync. On the memory front we've got some Corsair Dominator Platinum. Now this RAM looks the business and certainly performs like the business. It's 16GB of DDR4 running at 3000 MHz. So if you want the RAM, this is definitely some of the best stuff out there. As for the CPU cooling, we've gone for an H100i radiator. Now this is a dual 120mm radiator, which if I'd sort of thought about it earlier I would have actually got some more purple LED static pressure fans for, but the stock fans are really quiet and they are customizable with Corsair Link software. But as you will see later on, I ended up going for the Asus fan control that you get with the motherboard. From my testing so far, the PC has remained very quiet and the CPU has remained very cool. And as soon as I start overclocking, we'll see how good this thing really is. Now this is the first build that will be SSD only, and it has 480GB of HyperX Savage. This is, believe it or not, probably the best looking SSD I've ever seen, which is slightly disappointing then when you put it in the case and you can't necessarily see it. Some other cases you will be able to see it, but it's really nicely well made and it's really nice and fast. The computer boots up very quickly and shuts down quicker than any other computer I've ever used. Whether this is entirely down to the storage remains to be seen, but nonetheless it's a very good storage option. Thank you to HyperX/Kingston for providing the SSD for this build. Finally, to power this whole thing we're going to need a power supply, and we're using the RM850i from Corsair. Power supplies, in my opinion, are never really the most exciting things, but this one has a super quiet mode, so if it's under low load the fan won't even bother spinning up. 850 watts is probably about, well, it's pretty close to the minimum we'll need for two 980s in SLI, but it looks pretty good. But the main thing really is that it's modular, and so this means that you can reduce cable clutter by only using the cables you need. It's also available actually at a pretty reasonable price, and because it's Corsair, you're probably less likely to run into a problem if you used a if you'd used a cheaper power supply. My old GS800 is still going after 3 or 4 years without any problems whatsoever. And so that's it for all the core components that are going in the rig. We've got some LED lights that are utilising the Corsair Link software as well, and those will go down in the bottom of the rig. And then of course we're putting Windows 10 on it as the operating system. So that has been all the parts in the Skylake build. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section down below, or of course hit me up on @PC Centric on Twitter. If you can't wait for parts 2 and parts 3, then you can head over to Twitter where there might be a couple of previews, but if they're available now, then you just need to click the little eye and that will show you all the videos that are currently live in the playlist. Don't forget that part 2 will be a full build log that will show you exactly how this rig was built, so whether you've built a PC never before or 1,000 times, it might be interesting for you to see how it was done. But if you aren't interested in that, then stay tuned for the final part, part 3, that will show you the ultimate gaming experience on both a 4K 60Hz G-Sync IPS monitor and a Asus 165Hz 1440p IPS G-Sync monitor. It's going to be absolutely ultimate. And if that's not enough, how about a curved ultra-wide 3440 by 1440 monitor as well? So stay tuned for part 2 and 3, and I'll see you next time.